All right, so this morning I'm out here pulling out some of my queen castles. I've got two different sets or two different styles. I've got these two on the left. My wife bought these for me years ago when I decided that I wanted to start raising queens, and I got these from Brushy Mountain Bee Farm, and they were a really good deal. Unfortunately, Brushy Mountain's out of business now, and you can't actually buy this style of queen castle anymore. All my queen castles are the queen castles. It's a 10 frame box. It's divided into 4 sections with an entrance on all 4 sides, so you can do 4 queens per box. Most of the styles that I see now are if they're 4 sections, they've got the 4 mini combs, which is I don't like because it doesn't match what I already have, which is most of my brood is all in deep frames, so you can't use deep frames. You have to have special equipment. So then the other styles that you see are the box is divided into 3 sections where you can put 3 frames in there, and I mean those are okay, but there again, to do, you know, in a box you can only do 3 queens instead of 4, so you're kind of not getting the same bang for your buck. I've made some videos on these before. I really like these because what I do is I go to my hives and I pull out a frame of bees. You know, I find a brood frame, preferably that's a frame of, you know, capped brood or that's half capped and has some eggs and larvae on it. You know, obviously making sure the queen's not on there. And I'll drop that frame of bees, of that frame of brood in one of these sections with all the bees that's on it. You know, if you feel like that frame doesn't have a lot of bees on it, you can always shake another frame of bees in that section too. And then I put a starter strip in there with that frame of brood. And we'll do a video, you know, checking these, and I'll show you. But in generally speaking, when I go to check these queens to see if they're mated, which is I always try to do it about 21 days from the capping of the queen cell. So I mark that day on the calendar, the day that they're supposed to be capped, and then 3 weeks later I go check for mated queens. If that queen is mated, generally they have that starter strip frame, depending on the amount of bees I put in, they will draw that starter strip halfway out, and sometimes they'll have it drawn all the way out to the bottom bar, and it will be full of eggs and larvae. And it doesn't take very long, you know, a couple weeks, maybe 2 weeks after I see that they're mated, you know, there's so many bees in these little queen castle sections that they need to be transferred out into a bigger box, or the queen needs to be taken out and they need to be put into another queen cell put in. So, you know, one year that's exactly what I did. Listen to this chicken. I've already fed them, begging for food. But one year what I did, and I actually went from about 4 or 5 hives to about 35 or 40, is I took I went through all my hives, and I probably sacrificed some honey production, but I went through all my hives, and just about every week or every 2 weeks I would pull out a frame of brood and put it in one of these boxes and put a starter strip in, and then I would come back and I would wait for it to I'd wait for the queens to come back mated. And then I've got 4 sections and I've got an entrance on all 4 sides. So what I would do is I would take 4 nuke boxes. Once I had, you know, 3 or 4 queens, if I only had 3 queens come back mated in one of these boxes, I'd take 3 nukes. But I would take a nuke box and I would set it on the ground, and I would, you know, orient it with the hole. So if it was say the queen that was in that section, that little hole there, I would face the nuke box facing this way. I would take those frames out of that section, I'd drop those in the nuke box, put the rest of the frames in the nuke box, put the lid on it. Well, then I would stack another nuke box on top of that one, and I might have the entrance facing the same direction as that hole. Take all the frames out of that section, just put it in that nuke box, fill it the rest of the way out with comb, and put the lid on it. Well, then I'd stack a third nuke box on top of the second one, and I might have it facing the same direction as this hole, and so on and so forth. And you see, you know, I have 3 or 4 nukes facing 3 or 4 different directions, all stacked on top of each other. By the end of the day, they all orient to those new boxes. I come pick the boxes up. I take the nuke boxes back to a bee yard, and then it frees up my my queen castles again, and I would repeat the process. So about, every month I was just making splits that way. And I didn't have a lot of bees. I started out with I think maybe 5 hives. No, I had more than that. I probably had about 10 hives is what I had. And during the honey flow, I would go out there and just pull out a frame, and I would drop in a starter strip. Where if I pulled the frame of brood out of a hive, I'd drop a starter strip in, and it worked really, really well. I still made a decent crop of honey, but I made a whole lot of nukes for me to take through the winter. So let me pull the lid off of these, and I'll show you kind of how these work. Now, this stack here, I kind of got off track here. This stack here with these 2 I bought from Brushy Mountain. Can't buy those anymore. This stack here I made myself off of plans from the internet. And I will put a link to those plans in the description below. Now, once you make 4 of these, you'll realize why paying $40 or $45 for those 2 over there is such a great deal. These from Brushy Mountain didn't come with a top, but these don't come with a top either. You got to make the top. So they work really, really well. These are made out of 3/4 inch plywood. I'm sure you could, I made these before the Advantech frenzy went on, so I'm sure you could make some out of Advantech as well. But you can make 4 of these queen castles from one 4 by 8 foot sheet of 3/4 inch plywood or Advantech. So you're talking the box itself you can make for $35 if you can get plywood for free. I mean, I don't guess it'll cost you anything. I have 1 inch vent holes on this side right here, and they're covered with number 8 hardware cloth, and I just use my little 1/4 inch stapler to staple those on. It works much better than the hand stapler. My entrance hole is a 1/2 inch entrance hole, okay? And like you can see, in every side there is an entrance. So see, there's vent holes over here as well. The reason, you really want to make sure they're ventilated, and the primary reason why is, for me, I have the best success with making splits of any kind if I can go out here in my bee yard during the day, make the splits, seal them up, take them down the road somewhere. Look, I know it's not necessary, but it works better. You don't lose your bees, okay? Seal them up, take them down the road somewhere, set them out, make sure they're in the shade and not in the sun, especially if it's hot. Put them in the shade, put them in a barn, wherever, and then come back that night and let them out. The bees will run out all over the face of the hive. Then they're going to go right back into where the hole they come out of. The next morning they'll reorient to their new spot, and it'll work really, really well. But you need these ventilation holes because you're going to have them trapped in there for several hours. I mean, like I said, you're only going to put 1 frame of bees in there. You're going to have an empty frame. There's plenty of room. If you got ventilation holes, you won't have any problems with the bees dying. But take them down the road, set them out, come back that night, let them loose, and like I say, you'll keep a lot of your bees in your boxes the way you want them. So, number 8 hardware cloth. Now the cleats on the bottoms of these, all those are just scrap pieces of treated 2x4 or just regular 2x4. You just cut them in, like 2x2s and screw those to the bottom. As far as the top goes, these pieces are also 3/4 inch plywood. They come, they're part of the plan. Whenever you cut your pieces of wood, you'll cut those as well. And these little dividers here, all these dividers are, for me, is you go to Lowe's and they have this 1/8 of an inch paneling, and you buy that 1/8 inch paneling, and when you're making the traps, like whenever I'm trying to get it to focus, when you cut this rabbet out here for your frame rest, you'll cut a groove the same depth as this rabbet you know, you'll cut it to where these pieces of paneling will slide in. All that's on the, they're on the plans too. Like I said, I'll put them on there. And you just need to make sure you measure, and the measurements are on the plans to make sure you get your holes where they go. Now the bottom is also the same thing. I just used that 1/8 of an inch paneling. You can use, you know, some thicker, heavier duty stuff, but you know, these these boxes here are kind of only used whenever you're raising queens, so they're not going to be out in the weather, you know, 24/7, 365. So you don't have to use really heavy duty stuff for the bottoms. I make sure that I glue everything. And another good thing about these, you see here I've got 1 divider, 2 dividers. There should be a divider right here under this frame. Well, grabbed the wrong one. There should be a divider right here, but I took it out. So let's just say that you had a queen mated in this section, a queen mated in this section. The one in this section failed, this one came back. So what do you want to do? Well, you can take this divider out. You can take the divider out of this section and just drop in another frame. And what happens is the bees that are in this 2 frame section that are hopelessly queenless because their queen did not come back mated will actually join up with this one, and they'll combine together, so you'll end up having 3 or 4 frames of bees. Same thing, the entrance for this, you know, for these 2 frames is here. So now you're adding these, so all you would do is take all of these frames and move those to a nuke box and orient them with the entrance at that hole right there. So it's very versatile. At the end of the year, when you're done raising queens, you can come to these boxes and you can pull out the divider here, you can pull out this divider here. You end up with 2 5-frame nukes. What you would do is pull those dividers out. You would take 1 queen, take her and do whatever you want to with her, and then leave the other queen for these 2 sections. Same thing over here. Take 1 of these 2 queens out and leave the other one. Pull this divider, so you got 2 5-frame nukes. Pick which holes you want them to go in and out of. Seal up the other hole, okay? Because you'll end up having 2 entrances for this side, 2 for this side. Seal one, leave them both open if you want, whatever. But then you just have 2 5-frame nukes. A lot of people make the little 2-frame mating nukes. I just don't see the point. I mean, they're nice and all, but I would much rather have this method myself. Now on the plans, they have some measurements, and you'll see those. But you can take a hole saw and drill out holes here in these individual little sections, and you know, set them up to put hive top feeders on them, like the little mason jars, and then just put an empty deep on top of these. I don't ever really do that. You know, I make sure that whenever I put my frame of brood in these boxes, I make sure that they've got some honey on them. And I'm generally making queen cells, I'm generally mating queens and doing all this during the honey flow and kind of during the summertime, so they don't need to be fed a whole lot. I mean, the fact of the matter is, if you're putting queen cells in these queen castles, the work as far as the queen development's already done. So, I mean, there's really nothing else you can do. You're just trying to make sure these don't starve. And I'm telling you, these things grow so fast that, you know, that's why I say it's a great way of making splits, because you can't run very many queens through here, and then you've just got these boxes, these little 2-frame sections so full of bees. You can take those 2 frames out and throw them in a nuke box with some comb or some starter strips, and within a month or so, by the end of the summer, you're going to have a nuke box packed full of bees ready to go through the winter. So those are the ones that I make. There's really not a lot of difference in the Brushy Mountain style. I don't guess it really matters since you can't buy any. You can see I like to write on there, see 815, so that would have been, I think that's an 8. No, that's 415. 415 mated queen. That one's 8. 815 mated queen. Oh, that was a swarm cell from hive number 3 there. Let's see. That was number 24. Oh, check for a queen. So in that one, I must not have seen the queen when I was pulling the frames of brood. I must not have seen the queen in hive number 24, so made myself a note to check for a queen there. This was from hive number 5, and that would have been 8. Let's see here. 815. I don't know what F queen was for. Oh, failed queen. That's what that would have been. So 815. That was a failed queen. Mated queen. Mated queen. Mated queen. And I've done some stuff on these before. Generally speaking, you get about 75-80%. So you put one of these out, you can just about expect to get 3 out of the 4 sections back mated. On some of them you might get 4 out of 4, and some of them you might get 2 out of 4. But the average is generally about 75-80%. But these are the Brushy Mountain ones. Not much difference. They got a little bit more ventilation in the bottom. You can see that groove that they've cut in the bottom. And these actually have a bottom board that can be taken off. They did not come with those vent holes. I added all those vent holes because I really see the need for a lot of ventilation on these, doing them the way I do them. So one of mine had a defective bottom board, and I didn't know it because I didn't know what I was doing when I first got these. So I ended up just plugging this hole with a block of wood, sealed it over with some screen, and I just drilled some holes in there. But anyway, so on today's project list, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to go through all these boxes, and I've got some of them. I can't see any. I know there's one on the bottom that got some wax moss in them because I'm a slacker and I left stuff in here. So that's not too bad. But as you can see, here's another, they just draw those down. But I'm going to go through these. I'm going to drop 2 starter strip frames or 2 good frames of comb in each of these. Why 2 starter strip frames? Well, because whenever I go to a hive, I'm going to pull out a frame of brood, and when I pull out that frame of brood, I will remove a starter strip frame. I will drop in my frame of brood, and I'll take the starter strip frame. Say this is a starter strip frame. I'll take this frame out of this box, and I'm going to drop it in the place in the hive, my donor hive, so that whatever hive I pull the frame of brood out of, I've got to have a frame to replace it. So I'll drop that frame in there, and they'll draw that down. So there's 2 really big benefits for using these type of boxes. And one of them is, when you're pulling these frames of brood out, you can take your old black frames, your old combs that you really want to rotate out anyway. You can take those out, and you can drop one of those in this box or one of these sections with a starter strip, and you can take that other starter strip and replace that old black comb with the starter strip. So that's one thing. The other thing is, a lot of hives, especially, I see it especially in the spring when the bees are coming out of spring, you get hives that are honey and pollen bound. And when you get honey and pollen bound hives, a lot of times it's hard for those hives to grow, especially if you're using queen excluders. So you're pinning this queen down in the bottom of the box, and there's not as many holes for her to lay in because the hive's got all those cells clogged with honey and pollen. You can pull out some of those frames that have some brood on it but have a whole lot of honey and pollen on it, and you can drop those in here. It'll really benefit this section because they're a small hive. They're not going to have the workforce, and they can eat on that stuff while they're waiting on that queen to come back and get mated. And what it'll do is, by putting that starter strip in the other hive, they'll draw that starter strip down, and it gives them a lot more room for brood and brood production by getting rid of some of that pollen and honey in the brood nest. So a lot of benefits using these little these 4 frame or these little divided 10 framers in 4 sections with 2 frames. I really like them, and like I say, I'll put the plans in the description. One sheet of 3/4 inch plywood is what, $35, so you need that. You would need probably maybe a half a sheet of that 1/8" paneling, which is about $20, and then you'll have to make your tops and all, and the rest of it's just kind of scrap wire and everything. But really good deal and a good method. I've tried a lot of other methods. I have made raised queens with nuke boxes by putting one frame of bees in a nuke. It works fine. They just have a lot of room, and that's just not real favorable for them to have that much room with just one frame of bees. I mean, you can do it, but I would only do it early in the spring during the honey flow, and I'd really consider going and dropping another frame of bees in there after you get a mated queen back, or combining nukes. But this here works really well. So I'm going to get to work getting these things set up, and you guys have a good one.